going to be kind of interesting to learn about all the things that you've been working on. But what I'm really curious about, where we can start, is how did you get started? I mean, you weren't always a real estate investor. You weren't always working on land development. What was the process that led you to that course?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So for me, I was working a W-2 job. I was actually in sales and I was working for an AI outfit in California, but I was living here locally. And so I'd only have to go in for like board meetings and different things. I was helping build out a sales division for the company and the organization, and I was making really good money there. And because of that, I had a bank balance that was stagnant that I wanted to try to deploy and make active and serving me and being productive in an impactful way. And so, with that as the thought process, that was the initial driver to look at, hey, do I want to diversify in, the financial vehicle side of things, like investing that way, or did I want to, financially invest into real estate? And I wasn't sure which way to go. And so, as I analyzed at the time, we were dual income, no kids. We weren't sure if we were ever going to need to move. We were renting at the time. And
Mm,
so, with all those things, I was like, well, I might as well better understand real estate. And it seems like I'm going to have to buy something at some point. And so, I might as well save me on commissions. So, I'm going to start taking real estate courses on the side. And I signed up through Stringham Real Estate. Shout out to them, right? Their real estate program in school. I don't even know. I think they got bought. I don't even know if they're Stringham anymore. But I went through the courses and my hours, and then took the test and got a real estate license. However, at the time when doing that, I would work my normal job, and then the outside of that hours, I would spend taking the hours to learn real estate, right? Then what happened is I started getting this feeling inside me, like this affinity, that I needed to do something or something needed to change. And I wasn't sure what that was. At the time, I was like, do we need to have a kid? Do I need to, do we need to move somewhere? Do we need to buy a house? Like, what was it? And so we started to do the spiritual exercise, right? And in asking the universe, in my dictionary, again, you've heard me before, and so you get me. I leave it to everybody to receive me from my dictionary, but more importantly, well, hear me from my dictionary, but receive me from theirs. And
got it.
so, in my case, what I was trying to do is I was trying to communicate and figure out what God was trying to tell to me, right? Some people might just say the universe, and I'm good and cool with that too, from the Scientology side or whatever, right? So the universe and me were trying to come together to figure out what it was that I was internally feeling. And basically, through that process and that exercise, I came to understand what it was saying to me, which was, hey, you need to quit your job. And I was like a little bit nervous about that because I had organized and structured a system and process that was really flexible and making great money for me. And so I kind of had a golden handcuff scenario.
Mm,
And so I wasn't so excited just to jump from my day-to-day job to who knows what. At the time I didn't have the license yet. I was still trying to get my hours done.
got it.
And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but my thought was is okay, uh if I jump, I'm just going to finish out my hours, and then maybe I'll get some base hits in real estate while I'm trying to figure out what it is I'm doing. And so ultimately, I drug my feet for about 3 weeks. And at that point, when time goes by, you start to you start to rationalize where you're at and forget about the direction that was given to you. And
Mm,
so at that point, I was feeling really guilty a few weeks later, sitting in my office working when I thought I had had a inspired, like an inspired need to leave where I was working. And because of that, I couldn't I was in a rock and a hard place. I no longer could jump because I wasn't brave enough, because I was too far removed from that inspiration.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
then I felt sucky to stick around because I knew I had gotten some inspiration. And so then I went back to the font. I went back to the universe and life. I remember coming in and into my bedroom and having a powwow again with God and saying, "Hey, like I don't have a backup plan here. Like, how am I providing and protecting for my home and my wife? How am I going to? I mean, this seems very careless for me to
Mm.
just jump without a vision or an understanding." And he came back to me and he said three things. He said, "Steve, you're successful because I made you successful. Why don't you think I can do it again? And lastly, why do you trust money more than you trust me?" And so when he said that to me, I was like, cool, I'm
Yep.
out.
Message received, right?
Message received. And so then I called up and gave my 2 week notice and I jumped without a parachute. And obviously, when that happens, and you've heard my story a little bit before, um, at that point, the universe tests you. Totally does. I jumped, and instantly when I jumped, I finished out my real estate hours because I was able to burn more time into it. So I finished it out really quick, took my test, got that. However, at the same time, my wife turned 26, and so she went from her dad's insurance to me not having insurance. She obviously got pregnant. Just that's just the way the universe works. And so no insurance, pregnant, and then our house floods 3 times.
Oh,
And I
wow.
have to, yeah, I have to jump in and figure out, like, without income coming in, how I'm going to fix the problem, because they'll fix insurance companies will fix the collateral but not the source of the problem. And in
Mm.
my case, if it happens 3 times in a row, it's a source issue. And so I had to go back in and replumb my whole house. So I had to go into the studs, replumb my whole house because all the piping was brittle, and then come back to sheet rocking the walls and painting it before they would start covering all the other damage, right? So that was my experience, and that was super super tough because we went super super broke in that process of trying to chase the quiet. And so from there, that's how I got into real estate. I kind of was pulled in that direction. And then from there, I had this internal affinity pulling me in a direction of land development. And to get into land development is super hard. And so, like, I was on the learning curve side of trying to figure out real estate because I knew nothing about it. And then I try to compile that with complexity from land development, which is by far one of the more complex sides of real estate for sure. And so, and the most high risk and all that stuff. And so then I started to apply myself to that, and I thought I'd send a resume around to all the builders, but I didn't come up from a trade base or family ties or anything. And because of that, obviously I didn't have a resume. So everybody blinked, stared at me. They didn't really give me a 2 minute window to even
Like,
talk.
why are you
So
worth our time if you don't have any experience? Kind of a stare, right?
that 100%. So they kind of blew me off, didn't really look at my resume. So that wasn't productive. So my next thought was, well, there's developers. Maybe I'll try the free process. If I offer myself for free in slavery, no one can refuse, right? And so I thought I'd just go in and say, let me scrub your toilets any way I can to be in the arena. And when I did that, what I found out is it's a lot more cutthroat than I understood. And they were like, why would we train up a competitor to do this?
Yeah, well, and then there's also the concern of liability. What if you get injured on their job site or something and you're not even employed?
Yeah, I've never, you're the first one to tell me that. I have never thought of it from that angle. I always just felt like, and that makes sense too, but I always just felt like they didn't like the idea of me coming in and learning their ideas and
Mm,
their practice, how they did it, and getting access to their numbers, their spreadsheets, their information. And what finally teed me up to acknowledging that, because the writing was all on the wall, I just wasn't astute to it. A dude just said, "Why would I train up a competitor, Steve?" And I just remember walking away from that so disappointed, because I was like, dude, how do you get in? I know you're pulling me universe, you're pulling me in this direction, but how do you get in if I don't have a resume and I can't even slave my way in? I can't even slave it. And I just remember going like, God is so much bigger. The universe is way more abundant than what this guy is saying. He was saying you can't feed my family and your family through this process. And I'm like, how many doctors are there? How many nurses are there? How many attorneys are there? How many, like, there's no way that that's a true principle. He's
yeah, well,
broken his mindset.
it's interesting you say that because one of the first things that drove me towards real estate was I was coming home from my sister's house during a visit for Father's Day, and I drove up into the Salt Lake Valley, and I'm sure you've driven into the point of the mountain there, and you get to go over the hill, and all of a sudden there's houses as far as the eye can see from one mountain range all the way to the other mountain range, and it just hit me like a bolt out of the blue that every single one of those houses was tens of thousands to a couple $1 million worth of money just stored as equity, and all of a sudden it was way more abundant. It's all out there, and I was like, even if I were to have a little tiny tiny slice of the pie, I'd have more than I could ever use.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. And that was my thought process. So from there I said, no, and I went and started door knocking, just landowners. I did what you just looked at. I visually saw it and said, well, there's all these pieces of dirt out here and no one's doing anything with it. So why can't I do something with it? So I went and started door knocking areas that had land. And but the problem is you can't actualize stuff up front because you're so hypothetical in science, right? It's like, I don't know the real science behind it, but I hypothetically think I could figure it out. So I started door knocking, and when I door knocked, they would all answer, and I'd use a term that I'd learned that I knew nothing about, which was, hey, do you want to subdivide? Would you ever think about subdividing your land? And they would be like, well, DR and Lennar and Boyer, and shout out to all the players, right? They've all sent me letters, knocked my door. What makes you special or different, Steve? And I just said, I don't know, but like, let me work for free again. That was my, that was it. Let me try to see if I can't maximize your value. The problem is Lennar, DR, and those guys had all the low hanging fruit. I had to deal with all the crap. I had to deal with like the bottom of the barrel, the most encumbered property, the worst soils, the most political opined properties. The ones with the most issue were the ones that I had to cut my teeth on because they were the only ones available to me because I didn't have money or I didn't have know-how at the same time. And so they were like underserved and needing the service the most. And so they were like,
Yeah.
if this kid's going to be stupid and do it for free, why in the heck not? Because I can't figure it out.
Well, it's interesting you say that. One of the quotes that comes to my mind is something I heard from Michaela Peterson, and she said that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. And so the problems that people don't want to take care of, that's where the opportunity lies. So excellent.
Absolutely.
I like that.
No, totally it makes sense. And that's where I was is I was most valuable to the people that didn't have any anybody serving them at all because I obviously didn't know what I was doing. So I failed my way into success, and we've talked about that a bunch. The importance of being willing to learn line upon line, and line upon line is failure at its finest
Yeah.
because you learn a little bit but fail somewhere just to learn a little bit more to fail somewhere, just to learn a little bit more to fail somewhere. And so it's designed. Life is just designed that way. You fell into success because your failures, as we talked about in the meeting you met me at, right? The presentation I gave there is 2020 vision because anybody, and I use this analogy all the time, anybody can throw up a three and shoot it and have it go in, but it's not a system, it's not a process. They have no clue what made that shot successful versus not. And the person that does know what makes it successful and not is the person who shot it and missed and then had to correct their form a second, third, fifth, sixth time or whatever. And that process right there is 2020 vision because you saw what went wrong and you see what needs to happen, right? And that adjustment, that nimbleness in your willingness to learn and adjust off of that failure is what leads you to success. And that's what ultimately got me in the door and ultimately got me all the way into real estate because I would take a deal this far and then I'd fail and that, but I could carry that knowledge with me into the next deal. And so I wasn't starting off at the same spot. I was starting further into the process, and then that would buy me more time to fail, and then so on and so forth until I had enough experience that when God in the universe sent me over a real opportunity, I was able to capitalize on it because I now had the knowledge base to actually service the project all the way through.
Yeah, and I really like what you're saying here, and I'm picking up a couple things. The first one is that failure is not something that you need to shy away from because it's the thing that's going to teach you how to be successful. And then the other thing that comes to mind is I was that person that had my first success and I had no idea why it worked. And so my very first real estate lending deal, it was a referral from someone else that I met, and I made I'd say about $1,700 net, not life changing money, but I didn't understand. Okay, what do I do to repeat this? And so it's
Yep.
just been a process of trying to figure it out again.
Oh, 100%. The worst case scenario for any gambler, not that I'm a gambler or anything like or against gambling, whatever, teach his own. But the worst case scenario is for them to go in and win first time. Because when you do that, you're like, "Oh, this is easy." And then you start doing things that and gambling at a level that you're not ready for. And that's, I see people like that all the time in real estate. They get in over their skis and they get themselves into really bad spots because they weren't maturated. They hadn't failed and learned enough to where they could actually capitalize on that deal. And so ultimately they end up in these deals that are bigger than them and their knowledge base, and then they're having to reach out in bad spots and bad situations because they didn't see it coming, and then they're asking to recapitalize the deal, they're asking all these things, and I'm like, there's no way for me to do that. I
Yeah.
can't buy your problem. You know what I mean? So I think that there's huge merit in line upon line, failure after failure, building the momentum through that process to ultimately be a mature person that can now actually do that. It's the overzealous, it's the shooting beyond the mark that gets our industry in a lot of trouble and in bad deals.
No, I agree with that. I've seen myself. I mean, I'm sure there everybody's listening who has any experience with real estate has seen some version of that. My curiosity for you, or I guess my next question is, you've run into all these obstacles. You have these failures. Were there times where you're like, "What am I doing? Why do I keep going?" And how did you get around the mindset struggles that were involved with all of these setbacks or obstacles?
Mm-hmm. So at the end of our presentation, another individual asked me that, right? And when you have an internal affinity to do something, then the university or the universe is calling you in a direction. Unless you have some connection and relationship with the universe on a spiritual scope, I said in the presentation, have a spiritual backbone, you're going to burn out because your confidence in that relationship, your confidence in that that higher power, right? And that it's playing for you is crucial when everything's telling you that it's not. And so you have to be able to trust. Another term they say, trust the process, showing patience, long suffering, your willingness to walk through problems and have a connectivity to an alignment with the universe in such a way that you can still hear inspiration as it's coming. That inspiration is vital when all signs say you're cooked, right? And so for me, that was it. It was my spiritual connectivity to what I was being asked to do inside, because you can have chaos going around you at the same time still have quiet on the inside. And you have to be able to acknowledge the quiet and trust the quiet more than you focus in on the chaos and the craziness. Otherwise, this chaos is going to consume you to a point where now it's internal. And so it obliterates the quiet. So you're like aimless and it just smothers you. And so it's your ability to hold the quiet and that relational trust in what the universe is asking you to do, even when everything is super, super crazy and chaotic around you.
Yeah, I like that. I'm thinking a lot about cutting off all of the distractions throughout the day so you have time to think about things and real solutions. Apart from that, I found that when you're in a bad place, the best thing to do is just to go to work, because then it distracts your mind from all the things that it thinks of as problems. It conjures up all kinds of reasons you're going to fail. And I think that it's okay to doubt as long as you're also doubting the doubts that you have.
Absolutely. So the universe works line upon line, precept upon precept. We talked about that, failing incrementally into success. And a driving car is easier to steer than a stagnant one.
Mm,
And what the universe and God does is, as you're driving, you'll receive signs. And those are the nuggets of inspiration. And initially, I was super offended by that. I was super jaded by that because I always felt like a little bit like a bunny chasing a carrot.
uh,
Like I would bounce after this thing and I'd think it was right here just to find, it being
it was
there and
going
there and
forward as
it keep.
well.
Yes, correct. Correct. And I kept feeling like the universe, i.e., God, in my case, was teasing me to keep going. And I'm like, is there no end to this insanity? Like, why do you keep pulling me in this direction just to have it blow up in my face again?
Mm,
Like, I can't live like this. My family can't be secure like this. Like, why are you doing this? So I had that moment for sure. But again, relationally, I grew to appreciate the majesty and the crafting that was going on throughout that process. That as I looked in review of that um, being pulled along scenario, I saw where he was working and he was loving me all along the way, and he was breathing me to the success. And I used, and there was a crucial moment for me. And it was when I was a new dad. And I used this as one of the talking points in my presentation for the group there. Um, and I was driving down the highway and my wife wasn't in the car and my kid in the back, I got my first daddy, experience here going on. You have all the fears and everything, and he's just yelling and screaming in the back. My little guy is just yelling, screaming. He's choking on himself because he's so like into his emotion, right? And yelling.
Yeah.
And I just was panicked. And I was like, do I pull over on the freeway? Is he going to die? And I just ended up driving as fast as I could home. And as soon as I got home, I hurried out of the car and I got in, unbuckled him from his car seat and I pulled him out and he stopped. And in that moment, the universe had a chance to talk to me and teach me. And he said, Steve, you can be like Sage in that case and just kick and scream and yell the whole ride and miss the whole ride, the whole opportunity of the ride,
Mm,
and then end up in the same place anyways. So why not just enjoy the ride? I'm
yeah.
taking you home anyways. And that was a game changer for me and my attitude towards the failing and the process of going from A to Z. Like he's taking me there all the while, so I might as well enjoy the fruits of this experience in this season of learning and crafting rather than being bitter and screaming and overly emotional through that process, so I miss the opportunity and the majesty of that opportunity in all my emotion.
I really like that, and it ties into something I learned recently myself, and that is that if, sorry, the the idea behind stopping and experiencing things for yourself, and it has to do with what I learned about how the brain works. And I learned that if you set an expectation yourself and you don't meet it for some reason, the brain doesn't understand how to interpret that other than that's a punishment. And so it's really important to set your expectations to be present in the current moment instead of being concerned with what you think should happen and setting up yourself for a disappointment.
I totally love where your head is at there because yesterday is only as good and value to you as it can be applied today, right? And tomorrow is only going to be as valuable as it can be applied today. And if you get too into tomorrow, you'll miss out today. If you get too hung up in the past, you miss out on today.
You know,
And then you'll pass so many todays that you'll miss out on life entirely. And that's what he was saying to me. And and you just need to understand that like yesterday has meaning today and tomorrow will have meaning because of today. And so you got to live today, 100%. I agree with your mindset. Love that.
so we were talking about the importance of living in the present moment, but it brings up a story of a dream that I had when I was a boy. And I was approached by this gypsy woman who gave me a ball of yarn that was all silvery in color. And if you looked at it closely, you could see it slowly disappear. And she told me that because I was frustrated with all of these boring things like busy work at school and my chores, that I could just give a good tug on the end of that ball of yarn and I could skip portions of my life. And throughout the course of the dream, I started doing that. Every time I got bored, I just skip over this stupid thing that was going on. And I got to the end of the dream and I realized that I was an old man and that I'd skipped my entire life. And so I think about that a lot and the fact that it's really important to stay present because those experiences that you're having, good and bad, They are the fabric that makes up your life. It's your story. So don't try to skip it.
Dude, that's a cool dream.
Yeah.
That is a cool dream. I mean, I think that that's so unbelievably amazing. And the way that you articulated and crafted that is going to be one that I remember for a long time and is so meaningful that it's those things that make up the quote unquote fabric, yarn, the fabric of our life. And that's so deep and so meaningful. I appreciate you sharing that with me and allowing me to um, ingest that and be able to hold that because there's so much feeling behind what you just said and that's cool. That's super neat. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Steve. I like sharing the story. Don't get very many chances, but maybe I will in the future.
Cool.
Well, I'm curious to talk a little bit about NAXXA. Could you tell
Yeah.
me about that and how that came about?
How did that come about? Like everything else, right? So when I got into the industry, I didn't know what I was doing and I was finding information from everywhere and it was just fragmented. It wasn't whole, it wasn't complete, it wasn't connected. And so for me, I started looking for because in life, what you try to do is you try to grab from your past to our point. And that's your wealth of knowledge. That's what you can play with. And so my wealth of knowledge was working for this AI company out of California that I built out a division for. So I learned the value of tools and tech and what it can do to bring back productivity and squelch some pain points in an organization, right? And fast forward, I had a million of those. So I was like, there's got to be tools out there that can solve the brain damage for me and more equip me to be successful faster or sooner. And I learned that our industry is archaic. Good old boy network, father son generation. It's been done this way. It's a tried and true way to do it. This is what it is.
Everybody with
They're
the
older
Rolodex on their
gener
desk still.
yeah, yeah. Older generation, nothing against the Larry H. Millers of life, right? Pencil and pad. But I, so when I tried to do that, it just didn't, there wasn't much for me to draw from, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. So then again, Steve being neophyte in so many different fronts thought, well, I'll just build it. And boy, was I mistaken on that one. Because building tech is so much harder than I initially thought. I literally thought that I was going to pay some code dude that was going to run it back to me in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever it was. And it took me years and millions of dollars later. And in fact, we're actually now using it because we've used it internally for ourselves. And I'll talk about what it is, but we've used it internally for ourselves to help us be more productive and efficient. And in our process of de-risking a deal and acquiring dirt and finding the disposition of that dirt as soon as possible.
So is it like kind of automate a lot of the busy work and the things that are repeat tasks?
Well, it brings all the information and centralizes it and then wraps it in developer logic. And so you're
Okay.
not just looking at information, but rather the tool is working for and with you
It kind of
because it
interprets
thinks,
as well.
because it works like you, it thinks like you, it analyzes like you. That's the cool part about AI and different, things. And we're having a surgence of that, which is cool and such a blessing. But the tool itself and what it does is it goes out and it looks for any developable ground and then it highlights all the property that's developable and then it runs hypothetical development on those property using the logic of a developer. It pulls information from zoning, it pulls information from neighbor products, proxy development, etc., and it takes that information and transplants it onto the property and runs development on the property, so you know what you can do on that property specifically. Then it also sits there and monitors the industry and who's doing what, and starts profiling everybody as they're going about doing their business and being involved in projects. And so with that information, what I can do now is I can log into NAXXA and say, hey, I want 30 townhomes. And it will go and find me all the parcels that facilitate 30 townhomes. It will then also go and find all the projects that are currently being done or currently uh, live or going through the cities or whatever it is, and highlight the ones that would have the 30 townhomes that I would want to buy in on, right? So it gives me two options. It gives me an option that's more organic where I can just start from the ground up, or it gives me a buy-in option where I can just buy in on a project that facilitates the same reward, right?
Okay, that's a little interesting. Questions just for some clarification. First one you mentioned was that it identifies developable land. So I'm assuming that there's land out there that isn't fit for development.
Correct. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
And then for the other thing you mentioned was that it identifies different parcels for the types of developments it can do. I'm assuming that there's different types of developments that a single piece of land can be done in place of another type of development. So does it kind of give you a comparison on those two types of developments as well?
Yeah, yes, it gives you a full holistic view of what can be done on the property. And you get to highlight it by whether you're looking at it neighbor zoning or proxy development, because it's pulling on all these other different product types and information onto the property, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's looking and it's holistically showing you all the different options you have on that piece of dirt, but it's also showing you, if I dive into a piece, right, of property, and it shows me those hypotheticals, it also shows me the subset of players in the industry, from developer, builders, investors, real estate agents, etc., that would facilitate the success of that specific project.
Now,
Does
is
that make
that
sense?
based on like previous projects that they've done in the area?
Correct. It's based on previous projects and information that we have on projects that they're currently involved in.
Oh, that's pretty incredible. This is fascinating what the things technology is able to do nowadays. And I remember like when Google first started being a thing when I was in middle school. And it just seems wild that it's come so far since then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's cool because I can sit down and know my goal was, part of the risk is, historically speaking, the industry has thought the idea of if I build it, they will come, kind of a field of dreams scenario. And there's no other industry in the world where you're like, hey, I don't know who's gonna come, but I'm gonna build it anyways. Like normally from a business side, you're like, I know my market, I know who wants my product, I know what my TAM is, right? I'm gonna bring that product to market because I know that that's available to me. Whereas our industry hasn't been tacticianally as well rounded in those thought processes as it could be. And so gleaning out some of the risk is knowing from the get-go who my exit strategies are, or my different various jump points. Because the problem is when you analyze a deal, historically speaking, you're not looking at all the other jump points and who would be interested at each and every one of those jump points. So you're
Gotcha.
like, well, cool. Here's this investor group that would get me the money to help me in on the project. Here's the developer that would buy that from me. Here's the builder that would buy that from that developer, and so on and so forth. So you could see like the total actual market need based off of the number of players that would really be interested in that project.
Yeah, that seems really impressive. Wow, that's a lot of detail behind it as well. So you mentioned that you use this internally. I'm assuming that you're also kind of providing is that maybe like a software as a service kind of a thing now? Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, so we're actually pushing for that. Originally, what we did is we just used it ourselves, but I'm not a selfish guy. I believe, again, when something's been given to me through inspiration, how can I see it as proprietary? I
Yeah, I
wasn't
think
the
of
original source. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, I
And
get it. I think of this phrase in my faith that says, "Because I have been given much, I too must give."
correct.
So,
Correct. And so from my side, it's a stewardship, it's a pass through, it's a two through. And so I've always had a conversation going, well, how would you love me to serve the masses with this? Like how would that and and obviously you want to never overpromise and underdeliver. So our first incremental step was to use it for ourselves, make sure it works. The next incremental step was not to have it customer facing, but to go to market and have the different groups pay us to just use it ourselves internally, find them qualified opportunities, and then every time we pass them a qualified opportunity, we would then get paid and compensated for that process.
okay.
So that's what we did, and we saw the value there and the success there. And so then we've moved the needle now, and we're actually setting to launch in the first part of May. And with that being the timeline, what we're saying is hey, we're going to do a pre-launch here coming in the coming days and weeks, where we're going to say, hey, come and be the first 100 to get a free 7-day access of NAXXA and use it to get because we want to cap it at 100 so we can really see the impact of the user on the tool, right? And
Okay.
so we're giving a free 7-day trial, and then if they do the 7-day trial, we're also going to do a full launch that ultimately allows them to buy in the first 100 at 50% of the actual cost, the monthly subscription cost. And so now you have this process where we're rolling out, and we're going to open it up to allow everybody else or everybody else's organization to receive the same blessings and benefits we have received from that little golden nugget of inspiration.
Very cool. Is there a way for people to reach out to you to take part in that, or
Sure, they can go on to, and I'll share my screen because you allow us. So getnaxa.com is it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out here, and if you go to getnaxa.com and you hit create an account, you'll be able to do it there as well. And so if you go to getnaxa.com/sign up, you'll be able to sign up, and then we'll see that you're registered on our side, and then we'll open that registration up to the 7-day trial, and we'll actually have our group reach out to you, give you a demo so you know what it is that you're working with, because when you're adopting something, you want to try to get the most out of it. And so we've kind of set up a white glove scenario where you get a demo and you have some access to our organization to help you get the most out of that. But that's one way. And then the other way is just to reach out to us personally at mcclarycompany.com, and we can go ahead and start the conversation there.
awesome? I'll make sure that I include all the links and stuff in the YouTube description as well when we post the video onto YouTube. But are there any other resources or possibly educational material that you would recommend to people who are looking to get started, specifically in land development?
Absolutely. So there's a bunch of different ways to come up. I didn't have the luxury to get into the industry like some. My dad didn't do it. I didn't grow up in a household of it. I didn't have any trade base or familiarity from the construction side. I didn't even have a real estate license that would lead me potentially somewhat into the industry. But what I did do is I just went for grit and just started door knocking. So that's an educational way to do it, as well as just
Definitely.
proving go and do it. But then there's also the other way to do it, which is MRED programs. There's Masters in Real Estate Development. Those are more like book practice. They're through an accredited university like MREDs down at the U or USC or whatever. And those are going to cost you anywhere between 50 and 100 grand. And they're a 2-year program. And they tell you book and then at the end of it, you get a certified title next to your LinkedIn that says I MRED, and you see that all the time. The other entry point that we opened up because of my background is we opened up a mentoring program, and what we've done is we've made the mentoring education process the actual fulfillment of our company and our deal flow. And so what we do is we allow people to come into our mentoring program and sign up. And we do it just the same. I'll share my screen again just to kind of help with the thought process here. Here's our mentoring program. And inside here, you're going to see that you can hit the apply now and talk to us. But you start and you learn the hawking phase, and then you learn the acquisition phase, and then you learn the project phase, and you can incrementally move through that process one by one and start as kind of a lower entry point at 10,000, and then the next one's 15,000, and then the next one's 20,000, which adds up to 45,000. Or if you buy the full 2-year program, you get it for a discount of $10,000, so it's 35,000. However, like by the end of it, our job is to make you a bona fide within that window, a bona fide developer where you can go out and be your own developer and make your own millions that way, or you can by the end be a franchise because you like our organization enough that you want to be a franchise for us. And so we open that opportunity to them. Our job is not to have a title next to your LinkedIn as much as you have the capacity to go and be your own developer, a true bona fide entrepreneur and developer by the end of it. And so, yeah,
Cool.
they can connect with us this way for sure. It's cool because we're fully funded. We know what we're doing, and the person that we start you at hawking, which is like learning what's good dirt versus bad dirt. How do you qualify dirt? How do you find it? And then once you've found it, like the next step is the acquisition side. Um, like how do you structure and negotiate that, like that piece of dirt? So there's a process, and our hawker is the one that sends the qualified dirt over to the acquisition guy, and then the acquisition guy, once he's structured and negotiated it and got it packaged, he sends it along to our project manager, right? And our project manager sees it all the way through. And so by the time you've been a project manager and you've done this successfully, you now are a bona fide developer is really what it is, right? And so you start here and everybody's been in the role before them. And so they're mentoring and they're financially and emotionally incentivized to get you your success. And rather than from an NRED program, you get access to your mentor once a quarter for maybe 3 hours, and he's going to walk you around his office and tell you how cool he is. On our end, we're saying, hey, every single day, day in and day out, you're next to your mentors. You're actually working with them with a fueled pipeline, with all the technology backing you and all the funds backing you and all of the network and the relationship pushing you. And MRED programs don't pay you back like in the moment, whereas us, we do, because as you're fulfilling on these deals and we're successful with them, we pay you guys commissions, right? So
Okay.
we're it's not just education, it's actual fulfillment of our pipeline. So we're motivated to make you a success as much as you want to be successful for our organization.
Well, and I like that you mentioned the relationships and the network that you're going to obtain along the way as well, because that's really the bread and butter of businesses like this, is forming those connections where you know who to go to for problems and solutions when you run into obstacles.
Oh, totally. And my motivation is my history. The guy said, why would I train up a competitor? And I'm like, well, shoot, right? I'm going to do the opposite. I told the universe if I ever made it into the industry and figured it out, I would never be that guy. And so I committed that I'd always pass on to the next generation, and I'd always make sure that there was a pathway for them to find success. And I can't be everybody's pathway, nor do I want to be everybody's pathway. I only want to be the pathway to those who are intended to be in my pathway.
Wow.
And so from that side, we've just set it up to be of a blessing to as many as we could in a scalable way that fuels new lifeblood into the industry with a new spirit and light angle that historically may or may not have been in the industry.
Well, it's very respectable, and I appreciate what you're doing. But I guess we'll go ahead and end the interview here soon. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off?
No, just go after it. If there's something that you feel like is pulling you from a universe to spiritual angle, chase it. You know, it pays to listen. It really does, not just financially, but in all the real metrics that are beyond the grave. It matters, right? The crafting, the growth, the development, the fulfillment, all that stuff is very meaningful when you're willing to chase the quiet and not just be consumed with the noise of, hey, can I do that? Does that make sense? Because
Yeah,
we
it
get
makes
caught
perfect
up
sense
in
to
a,
me.
yeah,
I
how can
like to
I
tell
do that
people
stuff?
this last year and a half, 2 years that I've been engaged in real estate and building my podcast, learning how to do lending, learning how to find properties, all of these things. I've had more of an enriched and fulfilled life than any other time because I have something to work on that's meaningful. And if you can find that in what you're doing, I definitely back Steve up on that. Get after it. Go do it. Go make the mistakes. Have the terrible experiences that you can tell as stories afterwards, and just have fun with it.
Absolutely. Those are the best ones. They're the most building. So 100% agree with that. I appreciate you taking me on and giving me the blessing to be able to sit and get to know you a little bit better. I love the whole, I'm a McClary, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love the whole gold pot Irish plug thing that you're doing here. I 100% support that and love that you're trying to be an impact. And hopefully I was of a service to you regardless of everybody else. At the same point, I want to be of a blessing to them, but I'm here more because you asked me, and thank you for that opportunity to get proxy to you and spend some time
I
with you,
appreciate
brother.
that, Steve. I really do. So I received that and I appreciate it. This
Cool.
has been the Pot of Gold podcast where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And thank you so much for tuning in. Take care now.